Today's a happy day for me. Do you know why?
Why?
Well, not really. I mean, the truth is the truth, whatever it is. We'll see what happens with the story in the end. I sent you the cetacean stuff. So basically, really quick, um, there's this group, SETI, CETI. They are backed by a number of universities and other organizations.
Hmm.
They're researching, they're researching cetaceans, whales, basically dolphins, to see if they have language. And they studied sperm whales specifically, and
Hmm.
they used artificial intelligence to analyze um, their communication,
Right.
their songs and things like this. And they
Hmm.
believe that they actually have a language that they've discovered that cetaceans possess. Not just It's not just random. It's an actual
Right.
complex language and alphabet, um, which
Which
is
is
like
badass.
which is an incredibly important story that I just found out about today. Even though the story actually just dropped earlier this month, I'm a little bit late.
Yeah, you sent me them, and I wasn't able to make the time to read it, but it's definitely, I mean, it's badass. That's awesome.
Well, the implications of this, if obviously the researchers like we still need to study more. We need to find out how to,
Sure.
if what's all here and how we can decipher this if there's something there, which it looks like there is. But I've long
Hmm.
suspected that this was the case.
Hmm.
I'm not a researcher in this area. I actually thought about becoming one when I was younger. Um,
Hmm.
it was an area where I actively considered pursuing a career actually,
Right.
and a double major in marine biology and linguistics to study this. But I'm glad that people are, and well, humans wouldn't be the only intelligent species on this planet if this is true.
Which again, badass.
Yeah.
Something that would be really
Well,
cool
it's
to
going to
learn.
upend our entire understanding of the world and the universe, and like we don't know how we're going to. Well, first off, we can't keep them in. I'm already against cetacean slavery, um,
Sure.
keeping them in captivity, other than for like medical reasons or like some specific right. But of
Well,
course,
yeah,
if they have a
yeah. I
language,
mean,
we
there's
can attain their consent then if we're.
yeah, and certainly, like if they have language, then there is, I'm sure that there would be agency. That would be you would be able to actually ask, which is, I mean, even just like the idea of asking an animal something, like what we consider to be quote unquote unintelligent life, an animal. The idea that we could ask something is just like that
And
in of itself is wild, you know?
well, the implications are, well, let's just run through a couple of them, right? Like one of which is like, well, how do we legally incorporate the cetaceans into our society, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do they have their own like, well, because presumably we already know they already have their own social structures, and so
Mm-hmm.
like, do we have like a diplomatic like arrangement with them, or do we incorporate them within like the United Nations, or like within like how does this all work?
I mean, that's a very good question. And I think
Within the
we
citizens of our own
probably,
country, even like I don't know how we think about this, you know?
yeah, I think we also, if we're asking that question, we have to even go further, like in finding out the exact nature of what they're A, capable of understanding, and B, what their preferences for societal organization are. Um, if you're talking about a society that's been, because like you said, they do have current social structures. They exist in a way that is it is at least somewhat organized. So it's not as though they have no precedent that they would be coming from. I think that like the investigation as to uh firstly the exact nature of that, because I'm sure that there's more that we can know about that, just without even being able to speak with them.
Yeah, MIT did a press
And
conference. Well, not a press conference. They did like a public where they had some of the scientists come together and discuss their findings. So
mhm.
like this is the real deal. This is
Yeah, no, it's the
yeah.
Smithsonian. Like
Yeah,
it's
Smithsonian. Yeah,
it's
well,
not.
they reported on it, and so did the New York Times and a bunch of other places too.
Yeah,
But like,
I'm more. The Smithsonian has a little bit less of an agenda than the New York Times typically does. And a lot of people consider the New York Times quite credible. I would consider on this subject, the Smithsonian reporting it indicates there's a pretty large amount of heft behind it.
yeah, and then the MIT conference. It's
Uh huh.
what but we're not alone on this planet. Okay, we have to like
Yeah.
find some way to deal with this, unless like the research is bunk, which I don't think there's any reason to think it is. Um,
I think if it's gotten
well,
this
there's
far, it's probably at least something
well,
to
and
it.
there were a lot of previous studies too that sort of indicated that they have like different languages because like the different pods at different areas of the world, they have all have different sounds and stuff. And so
Sure.
like there was already reason to think like if it was just random, why are they using different languages?
Right.
And this is just sperm whales. Like it could be the case that sperm whales are more evolved than other types of cetaceans, right? Potentially, and that
Right.
this is
Right.
like a unique sperm whale thing. And I mean, I don't know if that would be the case. And like they also know about the orcas too, about how they have the
Hmm.
most was it like this
Hmm.
was it spindle neurons or something?
I,
Um,
I I wouldn't say that I know that amount
no, it
of
wasn't. I'm
on
sorry. It
this
was
subject, but
they look at well, they use these methods to study. I'm not an expert on this area, but I looked into it a little bit. Anyway, huge fucking deal. Also, what do the religions
it's
do, right?
excellent. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's tons of if they are legitimately intelligent life, like there's tons of implications. Religion, culture, like there's just the language, diplomacy. I think the question of diplomacy and how we interface with them once we are able to communicate with them, it's such a fascinating question.
Well, and I hope we don't fuck it up.
Yeah. No, I mean that's part of why it's a fascinating question. And there's a lot of ways it could go right. There's a lot of ways it could go wrong. I mean, we, it's arguable our society has not reached a level of development where we're at any kind of equilibrium. And I think that you could argue that without our interference, they mostly operate at some type of an equilibrium, even if we don't necessarily entirely understand it. They operate in a much more I hesitate to say the word sustainable because it has a lot of implications that I'm not attaching to it. But as far as I am aware, in a more literal usage of the word sustainable, the whales operate in a much more sustainable fashion than we do currently.
So the religion aspect specifically, um, it could go a number of ways, and probably different
Hmm.
religious groups will have their own thing. Like some of them might just deny it's real at all. Like they could literally be talking to one probably, and they'd still like through
Hmm.
a translator or something, and they'd still probably reject it because, or I don't know. I mean, like religions adapt and grow over time. There might be die-hard sects that don't believe it, right? But I think most probably would accept it. Um, but what do they do with that information? Like they might try to convert them, right? Like, hey, we got like
I hope we don't do that.
I hope that I think
That's
they have the right to do that if they want to be
yeah, I
missionaries
guess
and they
that's
want to.
true.
I mean,
I
like,
guess that's
but
true.
obviously the cetaceans, if they're listening to this, if they're reading my book, if we
I
find some
guess
way to translate that, if they're listening to this or reading this book in the future, like because we find some way to communicate with them, um, just obviously take into account a wide variety of perspectives. Don't just believe that the first missionary you encounter is telling you the truth about humans or about anything. Just
sure.
obviously examine things critically. That's what I would say to them.
And that's kind of the thing that I was getting at is I hope that institutionally speaking, we don't whatever we're using to explore communication with them, I hope that is not the immediate purpose of it. Like
Right, that shouldn't be the first
down the
thing. Now,
line
like as we
after
integrate
it's
them into
normalized,
yeah,
yes, as it's normalized and we have like individual conversations and
hmm
those types of things, I think that that's a very
not our
different
first
situation.
encounter. We are the gods. Actually, by the way, I don't want to let you know that. You know, come in
Well, I
like
mean, we're in a lot of ways, yes, we are because we are capable of wreaking total havoc on them if we wanted to, and that is also a prospect that I think is probably not necessarily a good thing to leave that stone unturned. I think that there's a lot of uh, procedural and protocol implications in humans contacting an intelligent species that man, that stuff needs to like we need
we need to be very
lawyers, we
careful, but
need
we should do it 1,000%.
philosophers.
We have to do it, right? We
Well, we
have
have to. Yes,
we
no,
have
you
to do
have
it.
to. If they're intelligent,
We can't just be like,
if
well,
they're
we're just gonna keep killing you and putting you in cages in fucking
yes, if
sea world, right? Wait, that cannot be the future we live in. We have to have
if
some sort
they're
of equal coexistence. That's what it has to be.
if they are intelligent and we are intelligent, it is our obligation to attempt to normalize some form of relations with them at
Yes.
very least.
Yes.
I don't think that we're fulfilling our end of the life bargain, so to speak, as a species, if we don't do that. Like I just think that is, if they are sentient and intelligent, it is
Well, all animals. Well, most
insane
animals are
not to.
sentient. Yeah, but no, if they're
Yeah,
intelligent
well,
and sentient. Oh, you said both. So sorry, I shouldn't.
yeah, it's both. It
You
needs to
thought.
be both.
Yeah. Well, does it need to be both though? What if they're sapient but
I
not
mean,
sentient?
that's a good question.
Like an artificial
I don't
intelligence,
know.
for instance,
Maybe,
that were.
maybe. It's
Anyway, we're getting. Anything else you want to say about the cetacean story? I think this is the most groundbreaking story this year so far. By far. Like the fact is, the evidence we have right now is leaning heavily, and there was already evidence before this, a lot of
Sure.
evidence too
Yes.
that this
No. It's
might have been the
definitely been
case.
discussed
But
before.
yes, but like this is the story of the year, I think.
Hopefully,
Unless,
more
well,
people.
we'll see what happens the rest of the year, right? Maybe like an
Yeah, I
asteroid's
was
going to
just
come and
gonna say.
destroy half the planet or
Hopefully,
something. But
sure, but hopefully, it's given the attention that it deserves. Like, in all honesty, now that I'm more familiar with it, I'll probably put it out there. I don't know if people will.
make a video on it.
I
Yeah,
don't know
a
if I'm a
documentary.
very great. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's something that making it. Actually, you know what? That's not a terrible idea, because talking about it from an institutional perspective, again, like my instinct immediately was to say, institutionally, when we are exploring this means, like, we really need to not like advocate some kind of agenda to them in our as we are normalizing communications, because that could potentially be a serious problem both for them and for us.
Hmm.
um but like, as relations are normalized, that's a different story. But I like, that's super interesting.
Well, are you so you don't want to promote Marxist Leninism to the cetaceans?
I don't think so. I think if they have like, Marxism Leninism, to me, is not something to like. I don't see it as a. It certainly has an ideological version. There is a version that is simply like holding up the principles of X, Y, and Z. Whereas what I am coming from is seeing it as a process of analysis, which is like, there's more than one way to look at it. And I don't come from it from the prescriptive outcome way. So no, I would not be a person who came at it, this type of a situation, from the perspective that we need to teach the whales Marxism Leninism.
Well, there's already some countries. Chats talked about them too, but I was, the Faroe Islands, Japan. Well, I think technically it's like quote unquote illegal in Japan, except for scientific whaling or whatever. But like there's various countries that do still do whaling, and that's obviously going to have to stop. Like the
Yeah.
exceptions that we've made, for the indigenous whaling, for instance, it's probably going to
Hmm.
have to go away.
It better.
Well, it has to, right? You're murdering people at that point.
Yeah, like, I don't really give a shit whatsoever about how indigenous a person is. If you're like it, like, let's say an indigenous person walked off of their own property of whatever nature, whether it be reservation or in the modern sense, and just started killing people. Like, that wouldn't be something we would tolerate, and for good reason. We absolutely should not tolerate any killing of whales,
Well, and there's also
with the understanding that they are intelligent.
accidental destruction of their ecosystem is going to have to be something we take into account to a higher degree. Um, right? Because like if it is the case that like certain types of sonar are dangerous to them,
Absolutely. Yes,
right?
very much. Yes. Well, certain types of sonar are dangerous to them anyways. Like,
Well, that's what
uh,
I've not looked into that super close, but I've heard that's the case. I don't.
sonar can literally rip tissue apart. It can be pretty beefy. It's not. It's. I mean, it's not necessarily the immediate case. What, like, with every use of sonar, but certainly it's something that we would. I mean, in theory, really need to reevaluate.
Yeah. Anyway, we're about to jump into to continue the games journalism section. Then we're going to get to some other sections too. Hopefully, I know you said you couldn't go as late tonight. First off, two things. One, do you need a break? Two, um, what's your deadline on the time tonight?
I'm gonna say probably about 9:30 my time, which is about an hour and 10 minutes more, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. And do you need a
Cool.
break?
No, I'm good. I
Okay.
probably can handle from here. Actually, you know what? Let me check on my kids. I'll be right back. All
Yeah,
right.
cool. I'll step out for a sec too.
Okay. All right. See you. Hello.
Hey, I'm here.
How you doing?
Good, good. You?
I'm good. The kids had a little bit of a problem that they needed worked out. So luckily, that was I think a good time to stop for a second.
Well, that's good at least that it was resolved.
Yes. Sorries were
Oh,
said.
that's a damn good question from chat. Holy fuck. Thank you, Key.
Let me see.
What would be the first question you would ask sperm whales?
Woof. Wow.
So how does the sex work exactly? No, interspecies. What is it? What is the Garrus meme? Right, the interspecies copulation or whatever he's talked about.
Just start showing them pictures and be like, wood? Pictures of various whales.
Well, so is that gonna be like a thing? Like, how would that? So humans, like, presumably, we would allow humans and cetaceans, if it was consensual, to get married and like do sexual things. I guess, right? If
Boy, that's a
what do we think about that?
that I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I think about that. Like the intelligence completely it changes the implication of it
Well, it's not
because
bestiality, right? It's just it would be the
yeah,
same as you having sex with an alien or marrying an alien, right?
yeah, well that's kind of what I was thinking about. Like there are people who like play Mass Effect or something and specifically target one of the alien races, etc.
Yeah, who would do
And it's
that?
like who, who among us?
Yeah, who exactly?
um I don't know. I mean I'm not saying it would be something I'd be interested in personally. Certainly not. In fact,
I
I
wouldn't be
don't. I
closed
don't.
off to the idea necessarily, but
I would say that I would be closed off because I would probably have a large amount
well, you couldn't
of
have kids
problem.
with them unless they like did like super advanced technology that's way beyond our.
Yeah, that would be
But you
technology
could
that.
have like a yeah. So go ahead.
Well, in terms of technology, that we're entering into like
That's
massive
that's
hypotheticals.
sci-fi
Yeah,
territory at this
exactly,
point.
exactly.
Yeah, gene
But I
editing on
mean,
a
for
level that
me,
we're like, yeah.
exactly. For me, it's not something I'd be interested
You
in.
could adopt it
But
though.
as a question, it's a very interesting one. And it's not one that I think I have an answer for because I don't have a gut reaction to it, if I'm completely honest. I don't have like a disgust reaction. I don't have a because the intelligence for me completely changes the whole aspect of it. Like part of when somebody like talks about bestiality and something, I'm disgusted because it's kind of like them taking advantage of something
Right.
in a
Yeah.
way. I think that that's awful like on multiple levels. I think that it's sickening that you would engage with in that man. I don't want to use any language that's going to get you demonetized or flagged or anything, but I think that is a large source of disgust because my initial reaction to that question was not you. I'm not like attracted to a whale or anything, but it wasn't like because it changes that. It changes the dynamic
No, you're only
entirely. It's
attracted to
not a
catfish.
person. Yeah. Uh, but it seems like I was maybe the not intelligent one. That was a good setup. That was a good setup. Well
Thank you.
done.
Well, I had one earlier
Um,
too, but the cheese ball thing because we were talking about if it was a low blow for Destiny to do that. I was gonna say I was gonna say that we had the expert of low blows here.
yeah, no. I am very much the expert of low blows. I really, again, I'm like, I don't know how we're going to get through this year and manage to get the attention of Steve Harvey, but I think there needs to be a 20-year reunion
Yeah. Well, at
of
the
the
Alt
nut chick.
F4 conference, that's gonna happen. To fly
Yeah.
you and him out, they're gonna make that happen.
The problem is definitely Steve Harvey there. I think he'd be the harder.
Most likely. I did tag him on
I would.
Twitter, but he didn't seem to notice. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think he pays a lot of attention to. I mean,
I don't.
people talking about kicking themselves in the nuts for one.
Well, I mean, he brought
But
you on his show to do it, so like he cares a little bit.
yeah, I mean, to some extent, sure. But also, like, I think priorities change in 20 years. He is a much more, I think, credible He's not like explicitly just a stand-up comedian now. He's also, I think, a life guru in a lot of ways.
So
He has self-help books and stuff like that.
Porcelain Chips asks, "What's down there?" That would, I guess, I presume that'd be your question, Porcelain. But so I kind of cucked your answer because I wanted to make that joke. Or actually, not a joke. I mean, interspecies relations, I wouldn't be opposed to it necessarily. I mean, like on a moral level, I'm not opposed to it. But like on a personal level, I don't think I would be either. I wouldn't be closed off. But anyway, what would be your first question to the cetaceans?
I don't. I mean, again, it would be
To the sperm whales, I guess specifically, since those are the ones
yeah,
that were
since that would be who we would be talking to, ostensibly speaking.
first, at least. Yeah.
I think it would probably. I don't know if I have it exactly worded, but it would be about. It would be about organization. I would want to know how things are, and this is again my first question to them, which means I would assume that a lot of other people have asked a lot of other questions to them at this point. But my interest would be organizationally. How does their society work? How do you organize this thing? You know?
What if they don't like humans? I don't think that's the case generally. I mean, like, well, it depends on the individual cetacean, right? And some of the
I mean, let's
pods
not.
do and don't.
Let's
But
make sure. Let's make sure to keep the identity politics away from the whales that we've been hunting relentlessly for centuries. Let's do that.
well, I
I
mean,
think
like
that.
humans might indeed owe them like some degree of like societal
I
reparations for
think.
destroying their
I think that
ecosystems. Like I
yes.
don't know, like
No, I think that we will owe them, but like we need to keep them. We need to make
at
sure
least
that
we
they
need to
don't get
focus on
on.
the future though, mostly. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, but
Well,
I
that's why I'm saying that
yeah.
though, because that the identity politics is very, very oriented in the past. It's very, very oriented towards um, taking identity and making it the
But
only thing,
yeah.
and historically flattening people to anything that uh, was adverse for their identity group in the past.
So
That is very, very much what identity politics is, and I want to keep the whales that we've relentlessly hunted for centuries away from that.
so
I want to just do let's make it right with them, okay? Let's do that.
So Key in the chat says, "What if they are intelligent, but they have the intelligence of a child? Let's say, like a 12-year-old or a 3-year-old or something like that."
Well, then
I don't.
I can't really ask them about the organizational style of their
I don't. Well, so
society very easily.
they would have a different kind of intelligence, like an adult cetacean. I think we would still have to recognize as being like an adult in a normal society. I don't. They're. It's a different mind. I think that
Yeah.
most likely
Also, a
they're
completely
entire.
different environment.
It's a right. So like, well, that could be one explanation too for like the Fermi paradox too, right? Because like
Hmm.
we always assume, oh, well, if a species has intelligence, they're going to build spaceships. But like, well,
Yeah.
what if well, you don't just need intelligence though, right? You need like opposable thumbs and shit. You need a whole
Yeah.
bunch of different things to organize a society. And if your environment that you evolve in is that you're a fucking giant ass creature in the ocean, like it's probably not going to be building too many spaceships anytime soon. So,
Hmm.
like that's one possible, explanation for like
What does ADHD
intelligence
look
could be
like for a
quite
whale?
common. Intelligence could be quite common. It's just that
What?
intelligence plus the other things that we would
Here's
need to build spaceships or radio
here's my thought.
transmitters.
Here's my thought. What does ADHD look like for a whale? Because I don't think that they have the amount of stimuli that we would have. So like is it shifting topics and focus? What's the rate at which we have to start asking the question, does this whale have ADHD?